Oh my. Oh my.
You are now tuned in to the Revolution Radio Show.
All right, welcome to the Revolution Radio Show. I'm your host, Farron, aka the Statesman. I want to thank you for tuning in and listening in today. Shouts out to my man Jay Love, who is traveling, most likely in the air right now. Today, I am going to bring you some conversations that might press your buttons, but fortunately or unfortunately, for me, these conversations, they need to be had. And I'm just going to use this episode today, since I'm here by myself, to give you an overview, definitely the context for this conversation. I do have a guest, my man KC from my community, who's going to chime in because some of this will go back to a spiritual conversation, because I got to set the tone for the dialogue. And for me, there's some things in life, that there's just no answers. And you have to be able to settle that in your heart, right? That there's some things in life that just there's no answer. None of us was born during these times when all these laws and these things were created for centuries. We weren't born. We don't control life. We was just born into this life. And based on what your environment taught you about life is what level of knowledge and education and understanding that you have. This is not a right or wrong or good or bad context. So you might be triggered because you might think my conversation is wrong, and I'm okay with that. This is the Revolution Radio Show on KCAA 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, and 1050 AM. So I'm open to your feedback during the show, after the show, whatever, because I believe this conversation is a must-have, and this is a perfect platform. It's called the Revolution Radio Show, right? We're out to make you think, possibly think, from a new perspective, from a new interpretation, from a new understanding. Again, not right or wrong, good or bad. So guess what? I also have some songs that I'm going to play that will match this conversation. For me, they do, at least. So you can chime in and sing along or not. But today's subject matter is masculinity and femininity, right? And social media plays a huge part in our conversations these days. The media, we know they control a lot. My voice is, don't hate the media, become the media. And so here on the Revolution Radio Show, we get to bring our conversations to the table. And if you'd like to be a guest and bring your conversation to the table, so you can control the dialogue, I'm sure we're open to that. But I'm going to set the tone for today's episode. And I'm just going to, we got, 55 minutes or so or less now. So I'm just going to give you the overview, some definitions, and then I'm going to give you some empirical truths. Empirical truths is where you can look in your life, you can observe in your life and see what you discover. And you might find something similar in your life that you could be like, oh yeah, you know what, that's what that, okay, I see that. And you might not. And I'm okay with either way. All right. So here we go. Masculine, right, is having qualities or appear traditionally associated with men. That's what masculine, right? Masculinity is qualities or attributes regarded a characteristic of men. Handsome, muscled, driven. Those are the definitions of masculinity, all right? So feminine is having qualities or an appearance traditionally associated with women, right? She had a feminine frilled blouse on, right? Femininity, qualities or attributes regarded as characteristics of women, right? So we're talking about characteristics when I'm talking to you on today's episode of masculinity and femininity. That's the context. Characteristics. I know we can talk about X and Y chromosomes, and this is not an LGBTQ conversation. This is strictly how do we sort through these conversations about what is masculinity and femininity. And I believe we have to get to the root of it, which is the definitions which you just heard. And then we're going to get into some of the conversations that I looked up. I do have my input of what that looks like. It's not the truth, but it's my truth. I'm going to ask KC to chime in with his views of this conversation. And then again, like I said, I have some music. So before we get started with my man KC, I felt that this song would set the tone for the conversation. If you are a Michael Jackson fan, then you might like this song here called Human Nature. Here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I was told that you cannot hear the music, so this is not working out right now. So my man, Eric, if you're there, man, can you please drop the Michael Jackson song? I apologize for that, ladies and gentlemen, but that song did not play. I could hear it in my end, but there was obviously a few moments of silence on your end, so I do apologize for that technical difficulty. So as we get this music part situated, because I do want to play those songs, I'm just going to bring my man KC to the table, and he can give you his overview, and then we'll start the dialogue. How about that? All right. KC, you there?
I am, brother. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, man. Thank you. How you doing today?
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm blessed, man. I'm doing good, dude. I just came off of the golf course, getting some swings in today, and God, golf is a frustrating game. I tell you, man, it's just today. It's like you have those times with golf where you feel like you just started playing yesterday, and I have been playing for 30 years. And I'm telling you, I couldn't hit a golf ball today to save my life. It's just so amazing.
Hey,
but I know that's not the subject, but
no. You know what? Just since you brought that up, and just to conversate with you about that topic, yes, I wonder. I don't play golf myself, but I can only imagine what goes through a golfer's mind like yourself when you mess up that one hole and you've got to go to the next hole. Like, what are you telling yourself? Like, how do you mentally manage that frustration and then be calm and cool for the next swing?
Oh, absolutely. My brother, man, you just nailed it right on the head. Golf is, I would say, 90%, maybe 80% mental. It is really a matter of focus and being able to, get yourself to do something repeatedly and keep yourself in a place where you're not allowing your emotions, because that's what killed golf for me in the beginning when I was golfing like I did today. As I used to get so mad, I would be throwing my club, man, and I would be using language that I don't even use anymore. And I'm telling you, it was just so frustrating. And it's so strange. Once I lost the vision in my left eye, and I realized that I was just so blessed to still be able to hit a golf ball. You know, after my last surgery, when they told me, Ken, this eye is not coming back, just take care of your right eye and try and deal with it, And I found that I could still hit a golf ball. Man, I was just so thankful and so blessed that I stopped stressing about anything else. And I just wanted to be out there swinging the club and enjoying it. And my game improved so much just because my spirit changed towards the game. And I started, I took myself out of the competitive aspect of it. I wasn't trying to, be competitive with my buddies. Again, I was just out there being thankful that I was out there. And I'm telling you, my game just changed immensely from there. And then I also want to mention Tiger and what he said, because I remember him said he had this one day where he hit the ball everywhere but backwards. And, it shows that even the pros have those days, but he said that that's the one thing that was his strength, was being able to leave the last hole behind,
right,
and focus on the next hole. And he said that came from drills that his dad used to do, things his dad used to do to try and get him off his swing, like drop the golf bag in the middle of his swing,
right,
or give a cough, or shout to somebody across the field when he's trying to swing, if he can break his focus.
Right.
And he said his dad did that to him all the time, and that's how he learned to just maintain focus. And so it's definitely a mental challenge.
No doubt,
Thanks
man.
for engaging me around that, because golf is definitely my life.
I wanted you to be clear for this conversation, man. I didn't want no golf swings in the way of this dialogue, man.
Right. I hear you, brother. But right. So let me jump in, man. Dude, that was one mouthful of a introduction and setup for the context of your conversation. Mm-hmm. You know me. I'm a man of God, and so I come to this from a totally different perspective. Right now, we're living in what is called a post-truth culture, and although we use truth sort of subjectively, and meaning that truth as it relates to me, but there is no objective truth. And of course, that is not in line with God's word, which is our objective truth. We're also being told now that we're living in a post-logic culture. And a post-logic culture, because if truth is relative, it can only be stated objectively, and that violates the first law of logic, which is you can't have a contradiction in the ideal that you're expressing.
Right.
Okay? So they know that, they understand that, so now they just got to throw logic out the window. So they're throwing truth out the window, they're throwing logic out the window, and basically all of this comes from the I am God perspective. Okay? Because if there is a creator God that we can, say, hey, has set these rules up for us, and these rules are objective. It's not my truth. It's not your truth. It's God's truth that he has revealed to us. And for Christians, that wonderful revelation comes from his son and what he revealed to us.
Yeah.
And so we have eyewitness testimony of the things that he revealed concerning truth. And the first thing that he did was set himself up objectively as the personification of truth.
Okay.
When he told Pontius Pilate, that those who care about truth follow me. I am the way, the truth, and the life.
Okay.
He repeatedly set himself up as the personification of truth.
Okay.
And so again, that's the challenge that we have in our culture, is that for those of us who believe that Jesus Christ, was who he said and did what he said he did, and there's a preponderance of evidence. If you look at the laws of evidence, and I'm trying to think of what the word is for the practice of how what is true. It's something like episteonomy or something of that nature. And how we know what is true, okay? Then we can really look at the things that Jesus said about himself being God and why he was crucified, and how the fact that he actually died on the cross, and that there are eyewitnesses who said that they saw him alive after having died and been buried. Okay, we have all these eyewitness statements that really, in a court of law, would be a preponderance of evidence.
Right. No, and
facts, right?
And I get that, but let's go back to the subject at hand, because this is going to determine. And I appreciate you for saying that, because again, people, what is the truth? And we have perspectives,
right.
We have interpretations, we have what our environment taught us to be true. And I believe at some point you're going to have to go back and challenge the stuff that you learned in life to figure out who you are today and what you want to believe in today. And for me, the masculinity conversation is being thrown around as a truth about the way that men are. It's the truth about femininity, and and the roles from our past generations, how they have evolved. And for me, I'm going to give you some of the teachings that I listened to Dr. Myles, is what I put in the comments as far as where my references are coming from in this subject. And then I'll give you my perspective, and Casey will give you his. But there are 5 things that Dr. Myles addresses about the male man, and the male in today's society is in a crisis, if it's a safe way to put that. So the 5 things, and we can go over these in more depth before the show's over. But the first one is, man struggles with the issue that we're created to be a giver. And we are a giver. And of course, if you look in life and you peel that off, yes, we want to take care of our woman and buy things. And like, that's not a problem for men, taking care of that, your significant other. But if the man is hurt from previous relationships, sometimes being that giver is hindered because of nobody wants to be taken advantage of. I mean, they got all these different views of life that that's number one, is to understand that we were created to be a giver. The second one is that males are drawn to a voice of pleasure. And you could say, if look in your own life and see that if you met a woman and they talk to you nicely and sweet, that some men, we get attracted to that, and it throws us off course, and you might start talking to somebody else, and that interrupts or breaks up your relationship. That's one of the challenges for men today. The third one is that men don't think that they're romantic. And I was crazy because I dealt with this one, and I still do today, that I don't feel like I'm a romantic guy. And so where does that come from that male perspective, that we don't feel that we're romantic enough to express that to our significant others, right? And for me, it came from a conversation about myself that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worth it, or that gift wasn't going to be good enough. So you got to know where that stuff comes from for yourself. The fourth one is, and if you've been married before, then you would definitely understand, but I think this happens in relationships, period, that the desire for extramarital relationships. And there was a study done by a gentleman who did some research and said that as soon as a man gets married, that his mind wonders, is he going to be able to be faithful to his wife by not what we call cheating, and things like that. So Dr. Myles says that if you be honest with yourself, that is a true struggle for men, because we are sexual creatures. And so that is a drive that we have naturally. And then the fifth one is ego needs, and the desire to be admired, the desire to be respected, and the thrill of being found handsome or sexy. Like, those were the top 5 things that he talked about that deal with masculinity in the perspective of what is the male crisis dealing with. And now that you have women who are independent, who have their own jobs, who make their own money, and you're telling the man, well, I don't need you to take care of me, I need you to be a man. And then what does that look like? So far, Casey, what do you hear? What do you have?
Hey, can you tell me what number 2 was again? I'm sorry.
Oh, number 2. So number 2 was males are drawn to a voice of pleasure.
Oh, voice of pleasure.
Yeah, voice of pleasure.
Yeah.
And I got an example. So I talked to my mentor about it, and he gave me an example of a young man in one of his courses, and they were doing this exercise with a young lady, and the young lady said, "Oh, you're a nice guy," and just that opportunity, he took advantage of that and started dating the young lady. But when actuality, in the back of his mind, he wasn't the kind of guy that pursued women. So by her speaking up to him and saying, "Oh, hey, like, oh, I think you're cute, I think you're handsome," that opened up the door for him to take his action. So depending on what you're dealing with as a male, these are some of the things that you could be facing in this masculinity conversation. Go ahead, Casey.
Yeah. Wow. A lot of that is just so true and manifests itself in so many different ways. I want to go to the Word of God here, and I'm sorry, I just was writing that stuff down and I lost my notes. Where'd they go?
It's okay.
Back to me. Yeah, and so let's start with the giver. Basically, the man is instructed biblically in the book of Corinthians, where it talks about how a man is to love a woman as if he loves himself, the way he loves himself, and the way that Christ loves the church and gave himself for the church. Okay? And so that giver aspect is really like wrapped up in that right there, where the male is to give himself and everything he has for his woman. Mm-hmm. And to me, if God created us, okay, and his son came to reveal to us what the relationship that God wants us to have with him and with each other, that some of these things would be like innate, inherent in our behavior.
Right.
And so that giver thing, I so totally feel that. And then the drawn away by a smile. I wish I'd had some time to look up some Bible verses for this, and I'm just going to go off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. But basically, lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride of life. These are the things that, get men and women in trouble. When we see things and when we feel things and our flesh is involved, a sweet voice and a compliment. I think that all wraps back around to the last one, the ego.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I'm telling you, my life was so wrapped up in this. I never, until I got the revelation and the truth of Christ in my life, I never realized how egotistical and how ego-driven my life was, especially in my relationship with women. I was just so caught up in the fact that women found me attractive, and just like this young man, they would tell you that, and man, you light up like a light bulb when those types of things go on. You feel an energy and a sense of self that really, really, goes back to God's word, where he tells the wife that she is to reverence her husband. Okay. And that reverence is exactly that. It's using words and actions to connect to his ego and that aspect of him that really responds to being revered and told that, man, this is my man and I love him and he is a fabulous husband or a fabulous, mate. Those types of things sustain us in a way that, man, I mean, I would love to have heard what Dr. Myles had to say about that and a little more deeply, because that is just such an amazing truth. And again, I remember this girl I used to be with, and the first thing that she did was grab my bicep and wrap her arm around my bicep. And when she was walking with me, she would always do that, and she was like, oh, that's such a nice muscle. I like that muscle, because when I was young, I used to do lots of push-ups, and so I had some biceps, right? And oh man, I'm telling you, when she did that, again, I just light up like a light bulb.
Right.
It's just amazing. Yeah. And so again, that aspect of reverencing your husband is really, really manifested in all of that.
Now let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you this, and because in the conversation of masculinity and femininity, right? It seems like in our conversations today that it becomes a competition between men and women, right? And so when you look at the scriptures that you brought up, when you go to Genesis, I believe it's chapter 2, 25 and 26, that we were created to dominate this world together as men and women, right?
Right.
And so if we're created originally for the man and woman to dominate the earth together, obviously something got corrupted somewhere down the line and it became more of a competition. Or like I said, if a male is dealing with these 5 issues and he's not whole and complete with his behavior, with his self, then how can you be a person who can manage this world with your significant other if you feel it's a competition? And I think, not that I think, but for me, the masculinity, femininity comes into play from that perspective or that view of, well, I got my own, she got her own job, they write songs about it. She's got her own money.
Yeah.
But then she's going to the guy and saying, well, hey, I don't need you to protect me because I can protect myself. I don't need you to provide for me because I can provide for myself. But in the roles of like my grandparents, those were not the roles. The roles was my grandfather worked and my grandmother stayed home and she raised the children. I understanding from where I am today, I could see how my grandfather didn't have to talk, right? So when you point to the masculinity or femininity of a male, it seems like today everything is emotional driven. You got to be in touch with your feelings. And so I had to realize as I was
100%.
right, I had to realize when I was healing myself that, hey, maybe I was talking about my feelings in the past, describing them, and I wasn't really saying how I felt. But as I learned and got educated, I'm able to articulate and I improve my dialogue skills on what what I feel. Like I use words that actually get to as close as of a meaning of my emotions or what I'm feeling, and I see that that's one in so many layers. That's one layer of this issue with masculinity and femininity, because now, because of the broken dialogue skills from our previous generations from 40 years ago, now boys are growing up with single moms, and they see how their mom cries and has feelings and emotions, and so now you're growing up, you're like, well, I guess so. I want to cry, but then when you hang around your boys, you better not, like, you have to suppress your feelings and emotions. So could the masculinity and femininity with men that the women are pointing to, could it be the emotional state of the male?
Wow. Yeah. Again, Farron, there's just so much in what you just said. When I listen to men, and I talk to a lot of men in this community, and the largest complaint that I hear is that she won't let me be a man.
Mm.
And I haven't been able to do like a focus group to really dive into that issue and that conversation about what do you mean when you say
Right.
she won't let you be a man, because that is 110% wrapped up in identity and gender roles and things of that nature. But I want to go back again to the word, and the verse that you referred to is in Genesis 1:27 and 28. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female male and female, he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over it, over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every creature and everything living that moves on the face of the earth. And I agree with you 110%. I mean, it's like in the beginning, they knew their roles and they knew their objective, and they were all about it. I mean, from two people, a man and a woman, the whole earth was populated. Okay. The Bible makes it clear that they lived long lives back then. Mm-hmm. And again, this was before the fall of humanity, when sin entered into the picture and caused a break in that harmony of purpose that was created. One of the things that Satan said to Eve when he was tempting her was that God is like not letting you eat from this tree of knowledge of good and evil, because again, before then, they only had knowledge of good. God said everything was good, right? It wasn't until they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that evil entered in and corrupted these things. And one of the things that Satan said was that God is doing this because he knows that when you eat of this fruit, you will be like him and become a god. Right. Okay. And that is exactly where we're at now with all of this, is that we want to play the role of God. We don't subdue ourselves. We don't submit ourselves to anything and anyone. And that is going to naturally cause conflict, especially when in God's word, Christ came and in the teaching of his, I'm sorry, give me a second. I don't know what happened to my voice.
No, like I said, I'm with you.
Right.
No, I'm with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, that he taught that the husband should submit to the wife, that his body wasn't his, that her body wasn't hers. Okay? It is a total, and man, dude, when I found that truth with my wife and we walked in that truth, okay? And so often you hear the criticism that the Bible wants women to be slaves to men. And that is just not how it's stated. Okay.
So let me I want to hang
slaves to each other.
I want to hang out right. I want to hang out right there, because before I go to this break, before I take this commercial break, when I was listening and reading about these relationships, the Bible context talks about marriage. Yeah. But when you hear these conversations in society about the girlfriend submitting to the boyfriend, that's not the same context in which the Bible talks about, because not everything.
Bang.
But the spirit behind what he's talking about was the marriage relationship where the woman submits to the husband.
Yes.
So I believe that the context of how we learn it and then how we apply it to our life, it's not talking about the male and female dating relationship. And that's where you hear women talk about, I'm not submitting to him, like I'm not doing that, and they're talking about the person that they're the boyfriend or the guy that they're dating, which of course in the biblical context you're not supposed to submit to that person in that fashion.
Right. Because absolutely.
So I see, as I'm learning, that the context or the spirit behind what the scriptures state versus how we apply them in our daily lives, again, the context is not there, because the type of relationship he's describing based off of the principles, based off of what we're leading to try to find that person to marry, to have these kind of principles apply to our life, which is two totally different views.
Absolutely. And again, let me jump in and just say that, you're right on the base of the problem, because again, our instructions from our Creator, who took the time to manifest himself in the person of his Son, Jesus Christ, to come and personally instruct the people of his time, who transferred these teachings on to us, recommends that there is no sexual contact before marriage.
Yeah.
Because it puts the relationship into a place that's not intended for dating. It's intended for marriage.
Yeah.
And women have so many issues when it comes to intercourse. Okay. I mean, oh my goodness. It's a man coming into you, the two becoming one. It is something that creates not just a physical bonding, but a spiritual bonding that we have turned into a recreation that manifests all types of failed relationships and children being raised in situations where that with baby mama and baby daddy and all this stuff, and we're wondering why we're having issues. It's because we're not following the program.
Yeah.
Now,
all right.
It's not like
let me take this break, Casey. I got to take this commercial break, man. I got to pay some bills real quick because, like I said, I wanted to set the tone for this dialogue. Again, this is the Revolution Radio Show. I'm your host, Farron, aka the Statesman. Shouts out for those that are listening to KCA Radio, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, and 1050 AM. Yes, the Revolution Radio Show. We are out to not make you think, but definitely give you some conversations and a context to think from, because society's views, they're not right or wrong, good or bad, but they could be corrupted. And we're just here to give you another perspective to listen from and look from life, so you can, discover your peace. It may not be your truth. I don't even want to talk about your truth, but how do you find peace? How do you become whole and complete when society has these different,
right there, brother.
Yeah, these different dialogues about we're debating about masculinity and femininity. Like that's driving that's the driving conversation about men and women. It has to be something, I don't even want to say better than that, but there has to be another conversation that we can talk from. So here we go. We'll be right back. The Revolution Radio Show.
Exotics Wellness. From massage oils to bath bombs, from drops to pain balms, everything you need in exotic CBD wellness. Go to www.queenexotics.com. That's www.queenexotics.com or Queen Exotics on Instagram.
Do you have a business that requires heavily upon your clientele base having access to cash, like a dispensary or a barbershop? Or maybe you're in the market for one of the new cutting-edge Bitcoin ATMs or self-serve kiosks. Whatever your ATM needs, reach out to my man Guy, the ATM Guy, at 855-4ATM-GUY. That's 855-4ATM-GUY, or online at www.atmguy.net.
Without even lifting a finger, achieve the body of your dreams. You're perfect the way that you are, but if you've been struggling to tone up and love your body, there's something that can help you get there. Put down the box of chocolates and pick up a wrap. No, not that kind. A wrap that you can wear. That's Gym in a Box. The Core Wrap, the best body shaper anywhere. It features ultimate performance technology, Tone Up 15 to firm tone and strengthen your abs as it shapes your waist. That's Gym in a Box. Go to gyminabox.la to get yours now. That's gyminabox.la because you deserve your dream body.
I am committed to play one of these songs, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to see if we can hear just a little bit of my playlist. Let me see. Can you hear that? Let's see. Let's see. Can you guys hear that? Can you hear that, KC?
No, brother, still not
No?
hearing anything.
Oh man,
I was just about to text you.
I promise you, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm just gonna announce the playlist that I have for you today. So that was Michael Jackson that I could hear on my end. Human Nature was one of the songs that I was gonna play. Rag and Bone Man has a song called Human. Very nice lyrics in that one. The Killers has a song called Human. I like that one too. Aloe Black has a song called The Man, which is pretty decent. I like Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror, because that's where you got to start from. I threw in a little bit of Mariah Carey, Emotions, for the ladies, because I think that's what one of the things that we're pointing to as far as this men with the embracing your femininity conversation. I believe that is partially how a man learns to articulate his feelings and emotions and be present to them and be able to articulate them and not be afraid to cry or, say how you feel. And I think that is really the main issue for this whole masculine, feminine around men perspective or conversation. I had a old school song from Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons called Walk Like a Man. That was going to be one of the songs I played for you. And then I had Drake for the people who are this generation who like my man Drake, so he has a song called In My Feelings. I was going to have that one play for you. And then lastly, me and my man Jody, when he travels with me sometime to speak at the military base, we put on You're Not My Kind of Girl by New Edition. And so I wanted to play those songs for you, ladies and gentlemen, but obviously that's not happening today, but that was the playlist that I had for you, ready to rock and roll. Casey, we have about 11 minutes. So let's let's kind of put some more context around some of the dialogue that I found, right? So,
right. I really want to just tap into that feeling things.
Okay, go ahead.
Because again, that too is very much generational. We come from, the generation, at least I do, from where, your feelings were not prominent. We will acknowledge your feelings, but you act and move according to reason and logic and purpose. Okay? It's not about your feelings. All right? Your feelings, they tell you, say you walk around with your heart on your sleeve. That was a criticism. That was not a compliment. Because, at least for men, we were taught that, you have to be solid. You have to be responsible. You have to be willing to put your feelings on the side and act in the best interest of your family. I go back to the days when they had arranged marriages, and they still have those today, and how that aspect of society was focused on putting your feelings aside and doing what was best for your family, knowing that your children would benefit from this marriage, even if your heart and your feelings were not fulfilled. But now we live in a society or in a culture where all we want to do is fulfill our feelings and fulfill our desires.
So
very much.
So for me, when I look at my life, and when I don't like to generalize stuff, but if I look at my life, Casey, and I can look at my past relationships and how I sabotage those relationships and cancel them and whatever I did to those relationships, it was because I wasn't whole and complete. It wasn't that I didn't want to do that, or not that I wanted to be married. Like, nobody gets married and says, I want to get a divorce in 5 years. Like, nobody goes, I don't think they go into a marriage like that. I think that there's definitely some dialogue skills, some communication skills, people call them, but you also have to do that intrapersonal relationship work to heal, to be okay with who you are, and as they say, whole and complete. I don't think that has to do with anything else but your relationships from your environment, and the Bible talks about your father and mother and the spirit behind how you talk about them. But if you've grown up and you have issues with your mom and your dad, then how are you going to be whole and complete and live this life of trust and honesty and loyalty? Like, these are other words I'm going to have on the show that people keep pointing to, that they want loyalty, they want all these various words that describe in some way of being. And for me, there's an activity of life and there's an experience of life, and they both go together, and you can't have one without the other. So if you're not experiencing yourself being whole and complete, and you're not, which would allow you to do the activities of being whole and complete, then you're going to have these issues of wanting to be a giver, but you don't want to be taken advantage of. Like, how can you want to be a giver naturally, but then you don't want this woman to take advantage of you or experience the feeling of being taken advantage? And she might not be taking advantage of you, but then you have this experience of yourself being taken advantage of.
Okay, Farron, I really gotta jump in here, bro, because you're pushing buttons on me right now. Okay, the first thing I gotta tell you is that, one, we're dealing with a broken nature. Okay, we're dealing with people who are not complete and whole for a purpose, but not understanding what it is that will make them complete and whole. Okay, Jesus Christ didn't come to make bad people good. He came to make dead people alive. So what's missing in us is the life of the Spirit of God, which recreates in us that wholeness, that understanding of who we truly are, and enables us through the power of the Holy Spirit to be that giving, loving, focused person. You know, one of the things that was really triggering me was the fact that the perspective of love that I get from the Bible is that love is not about you. It is 110% not love until it's about somebody else. Love is not about your feelings, as the world wants to teach us, but it is 110% about being obedient to the Word of God and loving your neighbor. Okay, those two things that he said, love God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your body, right?
Right.
And then your neighbor as yourself. That's how he described our purpose and our goal. And so again, ever since the 1960s, when we shifted from, I'm trying to think of the name of the culture that we were in before the 1960s, and I'm not going to think of it right now. I'm just going to leave it alone. Basically, that self-help, self-identity, this, that, and the other, you know, came into our culture, and it became about focusing on the self, where with Christianity, it's about acknowledging that self is broken, understanding the healing process that takes place by accepting what God has provided for us to heal us. Man, I could go into that. I will be going into that in my Bible study that I'll be doing online, about how we are healed by what Christ did, and that brokenness in us. So all those things that you talked about get healed, and then we are enabled to go out and be the lover that this word asks us to be, and that our mates truly need, because we're able to get the focus off of us.
I will agree with you, because I did hear in the teachings that that's one of the ways we have to die to self in that marriage. And he gives some great examples of even, you know, being a basketball player, and your friends want to go play basketball, and now you're married, and you got to be like, nah, I can't go play basketball. You know, sometimes you just have to let some of your life things go, or you have to be able to create that relationship to where it's manageable, and you can work those things out. But we got like 3 minutes left, Casey.
Wow.
Like I said, I wanted to set the context for today's episode, because I know in the future we're going to bring more of these dialogues, and it's going to lead into more of the X and Y conversation, because of the way society is just starting to, you know, view itself with the different genders. So I thought that this would be at least the foundation of what masculine and feminine and masculinity and femininity at its original idea, right? And
absolutely,
depending on what you believe in, for those who are listening, I mean, we believe in the Bible principles and the kingdom principles, and for me, that's what I go back to for my original ideas about these conversations. And like I said, I had to start doing my own work to be okay with Farron first, because I'm destroying relationships. And you want to be a giver, you want to be romantic, but if you're not whole and complete, and you're not experiencing that within yourself first, like, you have to give compassion to yourself. We want people to be compassionate to us, but we don't be compassionate to our own self. Like, so there's, again, the activities of life and the experience of life. And I believe we have to also not just focus on the activities. And even the Bible talks about it, KC. It's not always the works of the person, but you got to pay attention to the ways of the person just as much in our relationship. So, man, thank you for your time, KC. I got to get ready to.
Hey, man, I appreciate you giving me a chance to come on and chat with your brother.
No, we got to do this more often. And as we already said, we got to, do this a little bit more often, man, and get some conversations going in the world, man. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you too, my brother. God bless you, man.
Thank you.
And all your listeners, man. Again, I hope you guys work it all out.
All right, we will, man.
Easy.
For real. This is the Revolution Radio Show. Again, I'm your host, Farron. We're out of here.
Oh my.